It's an exciting day. We have a really great presentation for all of you having to do with workforce development with Bridget Dazey. Bridget has presented before here at the Oregon City Business Alliance, and just a lot of things happening in the workplace environment today. A lot of it due to the pandemic, a lot of remote offices becoming more predominant. The downtown core kind of moving out from there to the suburbs. What does that mean when it comes to employee retention? The training that's needed to compete in the world environment now for the ever-changing technological advances that are occurring in new industries. And a lot of the jobs that the workers of today, by the time they graduate from college or go through various educational programs, a lot of the jobs haven't even been created yet that they'll be applying for. So we're really excited to see what Bridget has to share with us. Again, for those of you that are here in person, the blue cards on your table are our question cards. We'll be picking those up at the end. We'd like to reserve about 30 minutes for Q&A after the formal PowerPoint presentation. And for those of you that are attending by Zoom, we should be able to receive your questions as well. And Sherry, our administrative assistant, will write those down and hand them to me. So let me say a little bit about Bridget, just so you have a better understanding of her background. She is now the executive director for, here we go. She joined Clackamas Workforce Partnership, previously known as Workforce Investment Council of Clackamas County, in 2008 as a disability resource navigator, and served in multiple capacities before becoming the executive director in 2014. She has her bachelor's and master's degree and has just really done an amazing job. I've known Bridget for a few years. She's just done an amazing job of collaborating with both the public and the private sector and really looking for creative ways to fund workforce development programs through apprenticeships, through career path learning, interfacing with the community colleges, and we are really honored to have her today. So if everybody could give her a warm welcome, that would be great. So I'm going to let you use that mic.
Sounds good. Put your mask.
Oh, I got to have that. Thanks.
Good morning. Is it still morning? Yes. Thank you so much, Kent. It's good to be here again with the Oregon City Business Alliance. I appreciate the request to share a little bit about workforce development. As Kent mentioned, I'm Bridget Dazey. I am the executive director of your local nonprofit workforce development board, Clackamas Workforce Partnership. And I am here to talk with you and hopefully in an ongoing way about the future of work. We are in the business of serving people. Next slide. So I want to talk to you a little bit about a couple of our success stories as of late. So I'll start with Sam. Sam knew he wanted to be a firefighter and had been working on earning his emergency medical technician EMT certificate prior to him accessing WorkSource services. He participated in Clackamas Workforce Partnership's Wildfire National Dislocated Worker Grant with opportunities of paid training and seasonal work doing cleanup with the Clackamas Fire District. He had jobs in retail and customer service and volunteered with Clackamas Fire District number 1, but his ultimate goal was to become a firefighter. These types of jobs are mostly seasonal, and finding full-time employment is known to be a challenge. He participated in customized training through Clackamas Community College, earning him 4 occupational skills certifications, one of which is wildfire chainsaws, which is an interesting certificate to have, and I think I want to take that class. Sam's persistence and the experience he gained through this grant increased his marketability to secure a full-time firefighting position. We learned recently that Sam had been offered a job with Central Kitsap County Fire District as a firefighter emergency medical technician with a $73,000 annual salary. Way to go, Sam. And now I want to tell you a little bit about PF. PF is an immigrant from Liberia who lives in a more rural, medically underserved part of Clackamas County. PF lives with his family of 6, including 4 young children. He was pursuing a career in nursing while he engaged with WorkSource through one of our grant programs. He wanted to gain hospital experience, so he pursued a training as a CNA 2. With his career coach, who spent hours helping him navigate the WorkSource services and supporting him in order to build different skills to be successful in Oregon, including access to CNA training at Mount Hood Community College. The program assisted him with industry-required healthcare requirements, supplies, uniforms, and a uniform and shoes. Other resources from partner organizations were leveraged to assist him with 1 month's mortgage during his training, avoiding costly fees and credit impacts. After his successful completion of training in May of 2021, his career coach worked with him to build a solid resume. Well, my screen doesn't want to. There we go. To build a solid resume, and he was recently offered, last July he was offered a $21 an hour job as a CNA in the metro area. He's now earning a bit more money to support his family and is continuing his goals of nursing. The reason I start with those stories is because we're in the business of people, and everything impacts someone's ability to work and learn in our community. So next slide. My goals and takeaways for today. I'm confident you will walk away with questions and ideas. People need to be supported by community to thrive. Centering racial justice for people who have bore the brunt of bad and not very good policies and social support is of utmost importance to us. And we need to consider the entire ecosystem that is Clackamas County, from cities to neighborhoods to families and individuals, how systems are meant to serve and how systems meant to serve interact with each other. Workforce development is a team sport, and so with a changing economy, with changing technologies, we need to be working together more than ever. Next slide. Questions we would like to answer, and these are questions that are floating around in my head on a pretty regular basis. How do we prepare programs and staff to authentically support and service to people? How do we participate in changing the opportunities afforded to each person in order to thrive? How do we better integrate, leverage, and coordinate the use of multiple policies, funding streams, and other public investments across various levels of government and throughout the community? How do we align and integrate the institutions and systems of service responsible for community outcomes? And who is responsible for ensuring the integration, and at what level of government? Among other questions that are floating around in my head. Expanding quality jobs in our communities, it has many impacts to our local workforce. We must prioritize mental health. This is a big one. People are feeling this pandemic. People are suffering through this pandemic, and some people are thriving. We know people need different. Increased flexibility. Our lives have changed and will continue to change. Let's prepare for that change. Earn while you learn models work, and our career pathways need a reboot. This is an ongoing conversation that we have to have across public, private, nonprofit, and education partners. Human development is the most important thing in our community, birth through life. Health equals wealth, and it is hard to maintain your health if you're unhoused, struggling with mental health issues, substance abuse issues, or other related financial stressors. And our environment means everything to the next few years in Clackamas County. Next slide. What's key, what is the future gonna look like in 2030? Well, we get to co-create that. We get to design that. So what's key is adaptability, paying attention, dynamic change. COVID has expedited some changes and slowed down some others. The future I want to see includes better coordination, increased support, and creating belonging in our communities. We want people and our economy to thrive, which means taking care of people in our community so they're healthy. Next slide. Nearly 60% of US workers are confident that they can adapt to new technologies, 60%. We need to get the rest of them in the game. It's time to rethink how, where, and why we all work. It's time to think differently about the potential of people and what they need to be more confident in their skills. We're not necessarily, a quote from the managing director of the World Economic Forum said we're not necessarily looking at a negative future in terms of jobs, but what we are looking for are major shifts in terms of the skill sets within each job and the types of jobs that will exist in the future. Whether that is in the care economy or education sector or IT sector, there are a number of growing roles. Next slide. And equity and inclusion are pivotal to a dynamic workforce and thriving economy. To continue with business as usual is an untenable practice, one which will cause continued harm to people and community. Now is the time to remove the historical and structural barriers that have shut so many people out for so long. Next slide. So just a few of the skills or competencies that employers are going to be looking for in what's in our future of work. We need to build self-leadership, like breaking orthodoxies and having the courage to take risks while we're building humility, empathy, and compassion, all alongside of working next to new technologies. In the book, The Future of Design by Lorraine Justice, she talks about AI programs. They're already sorting through massive amounts of information from legal and health sectors. As data gathering becomes more refined, the data service expert, computer, or human may become part of the design team. What does this mean for the future of design? Design problem-solving processes might expand with more diverse team members and the necessary data to solve complex problems like poverty, homelessness, cybersecurity, AI ethics, skill development in a 21st century. Technologies like artificial intelligence, smart machine learning and processes, and big data must be honed to aid in solving problems confronting our community. The design will have to intersect at important points like art, science, technology, and human life. As technology becomes more a part of our lives, bodies, pets, and homes, design thinking and reasoning will play a role. We are having conversations locally in Clackamas County about artificial intelligence curriculum for people who will create it, which is less than 5% of our population in technology, and everyone else who will work and live alongside of it. AI development did not slow down during the pandemic. In fact, it sped up. And the use of data could benefit communities since it should belong to the public anyway. And you could ask 60 futurists and you would get 60 different answers about what skills will be necessary for the future. Another book, Meta Skills by Marty Neumeier, cites 5 different meta skills that are going to be pertinent to the future economy. Feeling, which is including intuition, empathy, and social intelligence. Seeing, or the ability to think whole thoughts, also known as systems thinking. Dreaming, the meta skill of applied imagination. Making or mastering the design process, including skills for devising prototypes, and learning, the autodidactic ability to learn new skills. Next slide. So we're going to take, there was the meta skills. Next slide. So now let's talk about some data. Why all this change? And I know that I come across people who have a really hard time with change, and change is constant. So one of the ways to get familiar or ready for change is to also recognize how people are feeling the impact of our economy today. The next several slides will show why planning for change is important. Next slide. So a little bit about Clackamas County, in case you're not aware. We have about 425,000 people across our county. Our unemployment rate fell to 3.7% in December. We know that the participation rate is going up, but we're still below what we were pre-pandemic, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. And we have an older workforce, an aging workforce. Next slide. Our workforce leans older. Not only are Americans living longer, but they're also working longer into their retirement years. There are 5 generations in the workforce. We need solutions for each of them because they are very different. Next slide. Some will argue about the term the Great Resignation and would prefer to call it the Great Churn. Whatever you call it, people are leaving jobs in record numbers. In October, we recorded 56,000 quits, which represents 3% of the entire workforce. According to the Oregon Employment Department, there are 7 unemployed people for every 10 jobs that are open right now. Next slide. And at the Gallup research recently found that only 40% of Americans believe they have a good job. I'm one of those 40%. I know I have a good job, and what we need are more good jobs for more of our community members. Next slide. Further, the Brookings Institute reports that 44% of workers, which equates to more than 53 million people across the United States, earn low hourly wages or wages below self-sufficiency. If you look at our next slide, over 2/5 of Clackamas County made less than $20 an hour. Just remember that, 2/5 earn less than $20 an hour. That'll be important when you see the self-sufficiency scale. Next slide. When we look at households lumped together by income range, 12.4% of households had income of less than $25,000 an hour, or $25,000 annually, and made up 19,000 households in 2019, and we know that that number has gone up. 29.3% had household income of less than $50,000 and made up of 46,000 households. So that means there's a lot of children and older community members that are living with a lot less than it takes to survive in the metro area. Next slide. The reality many people and families experience is felt and will continue to be felt by all of us. Building community resiliency is something we do now. While the full scope of recovery investments is not clear, it is clear that significant new investments in workforce development will be on the way. But for these resources to live up to the promise of building a better, more inclusive economy, the field of workforce development needs a new narrative that reflects current labor market realities. It's time for workforce development, and Clackamas Workforce Partnership embraces this, to build common cause with organizations, business, and community partners that share our goal, connecting people to decent, dignified, family-sustaining wages. This table compares MIT and the University of Washington self-sufficiency wage budgets for 2021. So again, we know that this year, with inflation, we went up over 5%. So last year, a mother or a father of one child needed to make no less than $32 an hour in order to survive in the metro area. Think about PF earlier when I was talking about, with investments in CNA2 training, making $21 an hour for a family of 6. Next slide. The cost of food is going up and is expensive. And people need access to good quality food. Next slide. The cost of childcare is again untenable. It's unaffordable. It's a complex issue, which is why we are partnering with the childcare resource and referral at the Education Service District and their Early Learning Hub to work through what is this. This is a wicked problem, as they would say. And since everything's going up, the cost of living is going up, the high demand of people is also going up. One way to measure the demand for jobs is looking at online help wanted ads. The total number of help wanted ads in Clackamas County reached 117,000 in October. The total number of ads has grown 171% from a year ago in Clackamas. And since February of this year, we've seen ads increase by 94%. So there's a lot of work to do. We have less people to do it with, and we need more quality jobs. So that takes us to the next slide. So the impact of workers. So what is a low quality job? Let's talk about that. While this phrase might evoke certain ideas, a low quality job can be found in any industry. It's a job that is highly demanding, emotionally taxing, pays little, offers few or no benefits, disregards the personal needs and experiences of the worker, or views the labor force as replaceable. People in low-quality jobs endure financial stress, ill health, and experience poverty at much higher rates. We also know that low-quality jobs exacerbate social and economic inequities across race, ethnicity, gender, and ability. Women, workers of color, immigrants, and people with disabilities are disproportionately employed in low-quality jobs. And these problems are only being exacerbated by this pandemic. Next slide. And there are impacts to our employer community and business community too. From a business perspective, low-quality jobs have higher turnover rates, which increases recruitment and onboarding costs, dampens productivity, and damages public reputation. Such jobs limit the purchasing power of large segments of our consumers, reducing the strength of the economy as a whole. They also strain public resources, as a growing segment of workers rely on a variety of means-tested benefits, such as earned income tax credit, food stamps, and subsidized school meals just to get by. Next slide. So what has the pandemic done to the labor market? While the impacts are still unfolding, what we do know is labor market participation rates fell from 63.3% pre-pandemic to 61.8% post-pandemic. And right now, remember at that slide earlier, we're at 62.2% for Clackamas as of this last couple of months. While we're slowly rising, we're still more than 1% below pre-pandemic levels, which is the lowest participation rate in 45 years. Retirements are accelerating, and those who are 55 plus that lost their jobs during the height of the pandemic are not rejoining the workforce. More than 200,000 people between the ages of 18 and 64 died from COVID between April of 2020 and April of 2021. And that, coupled with reduced immigration, means that there are more than 1 million fewer prime age workers now than there were pre-pandemic. Next slide. The public workforce system underwent an assessment as a result of Senate Bill 623 that passed last year in the Oregon legislature. The assessment, that it has a recent report, and I can share it with the OCBA to share with its members and attendees. It included participation from job seekers, employers, service providers, community members, and other public sector entities. The major takeaways from this report indicated that people want and need greater understanding of the resources available through the public workforce system, ease of access and a more user-friendly process, more human-centered and personalized experiences and opportunities, and support in removing or working past barriers in education and employment. This information, in addition to countless pieces of data gathered over the last few years, has led to the creation of our Quality Jobs Initiative. This is an equity-centered approach to workforce and economic development, which will help address socioeconomic disparities for marginalized populations and meet the labor needs of employers. The Quality Jobs Initiative was informed by an advisory council of employers, workers, and community advocates, and provides, among other things, a framework for employers of all sizes to create job opportunities and workplace cultures that are high quality and responsive to the needs of their workers. This includes shifting policies and practices to be more person-centered and considerate of the personal needs of employees. Give employees a voice in decision-making that impact their work, provide living wage jobs and full benefits that are reflective of the cost of living in this region, and support employees in their professional development. People are no longer interested in being treated as disposable, in working for peanuts, and in sacrificing their family and personal life in favor of a job that does not value them. It is critical that employers respond appropriately, or we will continue to face worker shortages and high turnover. Next slide. In 2008, local workforce boards, and with work systems leading, adopted the self-sufficiency standard, that was up on slide 17, as a way to better understand what it takes to be economically self-sufficient in Oregon, depending on location and family type. The state has now adopted the standard and is partnering with us to support the research and share information statewide. Our mission is to coordinate a regional workforce system that supports individual prosperity and business competitiveness. In 2010, we joined forces with our partners in Southwest Washington and in Multnomah and Washington counties to form the Columbia-Willamette Workforce Collaborative. I've talked to Oregon City Business Alliance about the collaborative before. This partnership focuses on working together to solve regional workforce needs, and over the last several years, the collaborative has consistently demonstrated its value and benefit to our community. And working together is important. Last year, we fully aligned our work with recently approved comprehensive economic development strategy coordinated by the Greater Portland Inc., which provides the blueprint for regional economic development activities. Quality jobs are integral to the success of the plan and its goal to foster upward economic mobility, particularly for our Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, persons with disabilities, and other underrepresented community members. Clackamas County also has a goal that aligns with the workforce system. By 2026, we'll see a 15% increase in jobs that meet the self-sufficiency standard wage in Clackamas County. Again, on slide 17. The tight labor market is leading to rising salaries, hiring bonuses, and a variety of new perks, but it's not clear that money is enough. The average starting wage this last summer was $21.22 an hour, a 14% inflation-adjusted increase from the fall of 2020. The goal of our Quality Jobs Initiative is to help support the creation and transition to jobs that enable workers to thrive, companies to be profitable and productive, and to benefit the healthy and sustainable economies that we seek to have. We think quality jobs can be part of the solution to our labor market challenges and believe regions who are successful in increasing the number of quality jobs will be more likely to prosper in years to come. Next slide. We must prioritize and plan for greater inclusion by leveraging our existing assets and seeking new funding streams and partners. Transparency matters, and so does data sharing, as well, and telling our stories, successes, and opportunities. Next slide. We formed a Quality Jobs Council that was made up of leaders from organizations and businesses throughout the 6-county region to develop a quality job framework. Additionally, 3 community members joined the council to represent the worker voice. We appreciate the organizations and people who participated in quality jobs. From Clackamas Workforce Partnerships Board, we had Tracy Rumsey from Woodcraft in Malala. We also had regional partners like the Oregon City Chamber of Commerce and Clackamas County Equity Office and the Immigrant, Refugee, and Community Organization. This will be a dynamic definition. The framework cannot be static. Since we need others to share their perspectives and help influence this, what quality jobs means in the Portland metro area. In addition to the framework, we'll also include toolkits and use of practical resources that are available through our organizations as well as other partners, and include an initial roadmap for actions and implementation. Next slide. Oh, next slide. This is a process that we've been undergoing over the course of the last year, and this is a national trend. We borrowed the idea from other communities larger than ours, like Chicago and San Diego, who have adopted quality job frameworks. If you go to the next slide, there are 7 different standards that make up for quality jobs. Paying living wages or self-sustaining wages, providing safe working conditions free from discrimination and harassment, and are responsive to workers' concerns. Having predictable and guaranteed work hours, providing comprehensive benefits, providing training and advancement opportunities, equitable, accessible hiring and onboarding processes, and a more diverse workplace. Now, what's a quality job to me is going to be different than a quality job to you. And I think that's the importance of having this conversation, is because for each individual, what they seek out as a quality job needs to be acknowledged for whoever their employer might seek to be. So we want to start those conversations as early as today, as early as last year, to really think through what does it mean for our community to thrive together. Next slide. The employment life cycle the framework is organized by the employment life cycle and informed by partner analysis, council input, and outside research. It's very, like, the recommendations will be actor specific, employers, government, workforce organizations, et cetera. And it includes existing tools. Some examples for employers that come from the framework, if we're thinking about retention, one goal to retain employees, they want to feel physically and emotionally safe in their workplace, enjoy their day-to-day work, and have a sense of purpose, autonomy, and dignity. So employers could implement a profit-sharing program or create spaces for employees to be publicly praised within the company. Or employers could provide access to financial counseling and literacy programming, or low-cost and free tax preparation services for their employees. If policy or advocacy strategy is more in line with your work, developing or adopting industry-wide workplace culture standards, such as the Safe from Hate Pledge in the Portland Metro region, to improve job site culture in the construction industry. Next slide. At this point, we will be working on how to best implement this new framework into all of the work that we do. Next slide. Again, what's key is adaptability, paying attention, and dynamic change. This means working collaboratively across systems that impact people's lives and coordinate across the spans of public, private, and nonprofit sectors. We cannot afford to plan for a society where everyone's needs are not considered. Next slide. CWP is working to expand partnerships to help meet the unaddressed needs impacting Clackamas County's job seekers, employers, and communities. This includes emphasis on increasing the number of culturally and community-specific providers operating in Clackamas County. As part of this, we are using existing community needs assessments to inform our work while developing our own asset mapping processes to identify available resources across systems and structures and how we can better use these resources to meet people's needs through a better coordinated service delivery system. Next slide. So we expect to see equity in action, funding outcomes, not inputs, person-centered and family-centered support, designing with service providers and our participants, and using data as an asset to drive performance improvement. Next slide. A little bit more about what a local workforce development board is. We're just going to pivot and share our work. This is a list of 13 functions of the Workforce Development Board. For the sake of time, I won't go over this list, but I wanted to share that promoting employer engagement is one of our key functions, not to mention convening, labor market analysis, accessibility, program oversight, and many other elements that are woven into what we were talking about this morning. Next slide. These are a few topics that we talk about on a daily basis within our organization and with our partners. And our public door is WorkSource Oregon. What's important about the WorkSource brand is it's an umbrella brand. It's not owned by or convened by only one entity. So under this umbrella brand includes the Oregon Commission for the Blind, Clackamas Education Service District, Easter Seals Oregon, Immigrant Refugee Community Organization, Clackamas County, Clackamas Community College, the Employment Department, Clackamas Workforce Partnership, the Department of Human Services Self-Sufficiency and Vocational Rehabilitation, and Job Corps. Next slide. What I'm excited about coming into this next year are several things. This is just a few. I'm excited about partnering with Oregon City and Clackamas County in new ways. Very inspired by the direction that Oregon City is taking through its Economic Development Department and James Grant's leadership, and we see that as that pilot really being able to expand across the county and hopefully beyond as far as how do we partner together with that local economic development. We're excited about Volunteers in Medicine being up at Clackamas Community College. What an amazing partnership that is. Creating more alignment across organizations and agencies. We have new youth programs coming online and increasing our partnerships with our pre-K to 12 system partners. We need to co-design a new system. We're a big fan of the 3 Horizons theory of change model and the idea that we can't just flip a switch and expect change. So we need to plan for that. We're going to be launching the Regional Construction Workforce Diversity Funder Collaborative. If you want to know anything more about what we're working on, I'd love to talk to you. We just released our manufacturing report, and we'll have other sector reports, including our State of the Workforce report released later this year. The legislative investments in workforce development are very exciting, and I think seen as a one-time investment in doing the systems change that we're talking about. And of course, continuing our commitment to serving Clackamas County, the region, through partners like the Columbia Willamette Workforce Collaborative, the state, and the world that we call home. Next slide. This is a list of our current board of directors. We have a 50% plus one requirement for private sector businesses in the C-suite and decision making. We have a 20% requirement for apprenticeships, unions, labor, as well as other youth-facing programs like Job Corps. And then we have 3 buckets that include education, the public sector, like employment department, and health, housing, and human services and economic development, as well as an all other category as preferred by the Board of County Commissioners. All of our board of directors applications go through the Board of County Commissioners. And we have 3 openings right now for private sector members. So if you're interested in embrace equity and inclusion, if you're interested in serving with trusted experts in workforce development who are rigorous stewards of public funds, we are collaborative neutral conveners, we inspire a call to action, and we are results driven and seek innovation in solving the problems that face our communities. If you're interested in learning more about what it means to be a Clackamas Workforce Partnership board member, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kent for questions and answers, as well as my contact information. So if you're not following us on social media, shameless plug, we're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
Well, thank you, Bridget. That was amazing. We certainly appreciate all the effort you put into preparing those slides. A lot of information there. And I don't think most of us sitting here in the room and watching on Zoom understood how many partnerships you actually have. That this goes on a wide scale. And everybody has a special component, a special a feature that they bring to the table.
Absolutely.
So there's not a lot of overlap. And obviously, we're in a very unique situation right now because of the pandemic. A lot of employers are trying to determine the employees that they laid off, do they really want to replace that particular job, or are they looking for, if I'm going to pay that salary, do I redefine what the scope of services that position should entail? Mm-hmm. And I know that you're working with programs, Tim Cook, glad to see you here from Clackamas Community College, in planning for the future. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the questions that we have.
Sounds good.
And again, everybody that wants to submit a question, please use the blue cards. Okay, I think we sent a couple of these to you, so hopefully they don't come as a total surprise.
Absolutely. I do much better unscripted. I only scripted myself so that I didn't go over time.
All right, here we go.
Okay.
Question number 1. The governor has introduced a new workforce initiative called Future Ready Oregon. The purpose behind this new program is to increase funding for workforce development, apprenticeships, and career pathway opportunities. How do you see the approximate $200 million created by this initiative being spent the most wisely here in our local region?
That's a great question, and one that we are thinking and talking about regularly, because this would more than double our budget, in addition to a lot of other grants that we're seeking out, which again is a once in a lifetime investment in workforce development. We don't want to squander those dollars. So a big piece of those funds will be to, again, procure with culturally specific organizations to serve our community in a way that people are requesting. So we are seeking more transformational interactions and not just transactional. Another piece of that is planning for the future. So part of the fund's requirements will be get those dollars out quickly and also plan for the future and innovate. And so we are going to be working on, again, systems redesign with our board and an advisory group. If anyone's interested, the advisory group is not just made up of board members, it's made up of community partners and other leaders to work through what does redesigning the public workforce system mean and what other systems do we have to interact with and engage with, because whatever decisions or choices that we make in our system has implications to other systems, just like they have implications to ours. So workforce is just another way to say people, and so people need housing, transportation, childcare, food security, utilities, a sense of belonging and feeling safe. All of those things are done in coordination and in concert with a lot of other systems. And so what's going to be really important is that we're in this together. This is a team sport. And so we need to be planning as if these silos that we have been working in are removed, because the silos that exist between a lot of our public and private investments are actually counterintuitive to us moving forward. So that's the work of the board, is to break down those silos and work together to build a better system and economy. And so we see that we're going to put dollars out quickly. We're going to be planning for the future. And it's not just that investment that we need to be considering leveraging. The Supportive Housing Services Measure Bond, that is coming online, and we're going to see a lot of jobs that are there to help support people to end homelessness and housing insecurity. The system should be leveraging those resources, just like we should be leveraging the other resources that are coming in through the county, to the community college, to our K-12 partners, because we're in this together.
All right. Long answer.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is a lot of money. Following up on that, the $200 million is basically being proposed by the governor, so it's Oregon funding from our legislature. You mentioned a lot of other holistic components of providing a safe workplace environment, housing, healthcare, childcare. Do you have access, does Workforce Partnership have access to any federal funding?
Yes, more than 50% of our funding comes from the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, overseen by the Department of Labor. We also have some other competitive grants that we get from the Department of Labor. So overseeing federal funds is a daily practice for us. We also have state funds, and then are competitive as a nonprofit for foundations and philanthropic resources. So and the funds that are coming from the state, or that they're proposing, I think they're expecting 50% might be general fund and 50% be ARPA.
Okay. And how soon do you think that funding might be available?
Well, if it passes the legislature, or when it passes the legislature, we don't know if the $200,000 or $200 million price tag will be connected to it. So that may change through the bargaining and negotiations that are happening above my pay grade. So depending on what that is, or what they carve out or add to it, will depend how quickly it can go into action. But some of our requests, especially I think it's sections 3 and 4, where local workforce boards are cited, is that we get those resources as soon as possible, so that we can procure for the providers and make sure that we're well staffed, so that we can meet the targeted goals. And we don't know what the targeted goals will be. So right now it's a lot of money to do what with, is something that we're hoping is there's as much flexibility for local communities, because what's true in Clackamas County is not true in Coos Bay, is not true in the Bend area, is not true in the Dalles. And so we need to be able to have like localized solutions to what's ailing our communities.
Okay, thank you. State economists say the number of vacant jobs right now in our state exceeds the number of unemployed workers. Recognizing that this trend will most likely continue into the near future, even though we have a very robust labor market in our state with a very low unemployment rate, what do you recommend employers do to attract employees to their specific workplace?
Sign onto the quality jobs framework.
There you go. That's all you got to do.
And then implement. But I think the message around the quality jobs framework is that this is, again, a partnership. This is something we're trying. We'll pivot as needed, but this partnership is about, like, how does the public workforce system support business and employers in a fresh, new way, where we're having more regular conversations and interactions about what their success means and what the people's success means, and what our community's success means. So.
Okay, super. Greater access to quality childcare is clearly critical for workforce participation. What effective strategies have you seen to increase the number of childcare spots? How do we expand affordable childcare?
That is a loaded question. Like homelessness and poverty, it is a wicked wicked challenge. The Clackamas County area with the Early Learning Hub and Childcare Research and Referral began the Childcare for All Task Force this last fall. And the purpose of that task force is really to explore what is it going to take for Clackamas County to achieve childcare for all, where every child between birth through age 12 or 13 has access to high quality childcare in a way that's affordable to the family and that meets that individual's needs. And so we have 4 different work groups that are trying to unpack the complexity of this problem. That includes the financial aspect. How are we going to fund it? What does that mean to create strategy around funding? There's not going to be a silver bullet or one answer, so we're all developing recommendations. Another work group is around workforce, because we want high quality, culturally responsive care for our young people. And so we need to build a pipeline of talent that can meet that need and also be paid living wages. And we know that the care industry has not kept pace with other industries that are male dominated. And so within the care industry, we need to have different conversations about how we take care of who's taking care of our young people and how much we value them as a society. We're working on infrastructure, so the cost of buildings and facilities can get in the way of someone being able to start a childcare site, as well as the policies. And the policies that go into, they can be cumbersome for our service providers, our childcare providers. And so what are we doing to work with local, county, state, national requirements to make it easier to access and get into the business of serving young people? A couple of examples of what local communities have done. We worked with Happy Valley a couple years ago, right before the pandemic, to help change their business codes. They were treating all small businesses the exact same way. And so they were requiring no more than 6 customers to visit a site within a home if their business was being run out of it. The state requirement is that a child care provider who works out of their home can serve 10 children. And so they were making it harder for a business in Happy Valley to be successful as a child care provider. We helped them to change their code to be more reflective of what their community could need, because it doesn't look the same if you're an accountant with 6 customers coming in during the day versus supporting families who are going to work. So there are things that local communities can do to address some of these issues in addition to our county and state partners. And so we're going to need help with advocacy and policy changes and helping leaders to understand that the decisions that they're making are impacting the young people and families.
And as a follow-up, speaking of young people, when I was young, I did some pretty menial work for a pretty menial pay. But that was the way I got started. Sometimes during summers, I would work 3 jobs in order to pay for my college education. Today's culture does not encourage youth to do that any longer. One of our questions is, how do we get the youth to put a bigger commitment into their future when all they want to do is be a gamer, and a gamer? What can we do to get them more invested in a commitment to provide the skill sets that they're going to need for tomorrow's jobs?
Well, I think it starts young. And it's supporting their interests. It's supporting the things that they want to do. If we know that 40% of our population doesn't like their job, along the way they got lost. They weren't navigating toward things that they like to do, their aptitudes, their skill sets. So we need to start really young, talking and thinking about what is it that you do? Something that our education system has talked long about is individualizing education. And so I think one of those benefits for our society, if we start to individualize education, is that we don't treat every child like they're just a cog in the system, or that they have to meet all of these requirements. We need to tailor an educational experience to each child that's coming through our education system. So I think that's one way. Another way is through inspiring partnerships and mentoring. There's a lot, if you can't see what you can't be what you can't see. And so we need to connect more young people to opportunities so that they can, explore what it means to be in the world of work based on the things that they like to do. And I'd say, there's lots of ways that we can get young people engaged, but if you think about, I think about my 19-year-old who has been alive since 2002, and so she's seen, she just missed 9/11, but she definitely has felt the repercussion. She never walked into an airport and not had to go through security. And so she's lived in a world that's more fearful of people who are different. She certainly isn't. They're embracing differences at much younger ages, but because we've tried to protect people from, other, that we've done some disservice. And we've also seen, they've gone through 2 recessions, they've seen war, ongoing war, they've seen their parents get laid off when that they couldn't work, that they put so much time into a company, and then after 20, 30 years, they were just let go around the Great Recession. So they've seen adults not being valued in the world of work. So I think another way to change that is to demonstrate that we do value our young people. We do value them through their life, and that we're going to care for them not just when they're little and adorable, but we're going to care for them as they get older and their lives change.
Well, speaking of valuing the services that individuals bring to their specific employment opportunity, you mentioned the Great Resignation, which was huge and is still ongoing today. A lot of those people have not gone back to work, but the industries that were impacted the most seem to be leisure, hospitality, and healthcare. With the aging baby boomer, of which I'm one of those folks, they're going to be needing more healthcare, more nurses, more skilled individuals to be able to provide for their needs as they, age in place. How do we bring those people back into that industry when they don't really like working nights, they don't like working for low wages, they don't like hearing people come and complain because they can't visit their relatives? They have to put up with a lot of issues, and a lot of them don't want to come back to that industry, even though we need them now probably more than ever.
So how do we solve that?
Yes.
Great question. Well, what I would say is a lot of people are leaving their jobs. I mean, a quote reference, is it the great churn? Because people are leaving their jobs for better jobs. And that's actually good for our economy. We would expect that. We want people to be thinking about, their growth in their occupation and career. So I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. But I think on the side of industries that have historically paid either low wages or low benefits, or have really, garnered folks that can either make it and make do with that. It's becoming harder and harder for it to happen. So I don't know that there's not an easy answer to these issues. I think one of the questions that you want to ask is around as things start to open back up and Omicron starts to become something that we're less afraid of, and we start to see, more facilities and venues start to do more things, people are going to want to get out there outside and play, and there's not going to be a workforce to meet that demand. And so I don't think it's going to necessarily get better as things start to open back up. In fact, it could get worse. And so that's why it's important for us to not kick the can down the road about planning some of these really weighty challenges. If we know that 2/5 of our population are making less than $20 an hour, what is it going to take for them to make more money or be on a career pathway. And if we have employers that are like, I can't pay more than this. I'm really stuck at this price point. I'm not making money. I'm making just a little bit more than they are. We need to have conversations about, well, what makes you as an employer an attractive place to live. So it's thinking differently about the whole thing, which means that we have to be intentional about how we plan, which is why I'm really excited about all of these initiatives, the conversations around childcare, how we do this differently, how we build new career pathways, because we're just in desperate need of that kind of planning and designing.
I agree 100%. Recognizing that one of the major changes that's occurring in the workplace environment today is technological advances. What can a community like Oregon City or a county like Clackamas County effectively do to compete with Washington County, that used to be called the Silicon Forest, because of Intel, because of a lot of these other technologically advanced organizations that depend on one another? Yeah. How do we compete over here for those jobs?
Yeah, there are a lot of employers and business community partners that want more network locally and want to connect with each other. There's also a lot of employers that are embracing new technology. So in partnership with Clackamas Community College, Oregon Tech, and the Education Service District, we're putting together a survey that we want to put out basically to the entire community, but mostly the business sector, to really ask, have you embraced artificial intelligence in your business or industry? Is it something that you're going to be bringing on site or online here in the next couple of years? What are conversations that your industry is talking about around AI? And is it something that you want to be part of the solutions that we start to develop locally? And what we're really doing with that survey, in addition to better understanding, who are the change agents in our community, but who's going to walk alongside us when we want to build curriculum to develop artificial intelligence? And what does it mean to work alongside of AI as an employee who does not know anything about code? I heard a while back that think about AI the way that you do a car. Not everyone's building a car. If you might be able to change your tire or do a spot check, but if something really bad happens, you're going to need to take it to a mechanic. AI and technology is going to work a lot of the same way, where you're going to need to do enough to be safe and secure, but you're also going to need some of those experts to really, dig into it. There's a lot that a local community in Clackamas County can do to get in the conversation around technology, and so we're going to be putting that survey out in the next month or so to garner who are our change agents in the community.
Okay, great. We'll look forward to receiving that.
Yeah.
On another matter, veterans and members of the National Guard, some of them have physical, emotional, or mental handicaps or disabilities. Is there any program specifically set up to be able to assist those associated with the military?
I know that the VA has many programs that are available for folks that have struggled with or have struggled as a result of their military service. And there's a lot of programs, support service programs through the county, through the college, through other nonprofits that serve our veteran populations. And it's one of our priority populations. It is called out as a priority population in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. So I think the other side of that question is really, who are the behavioral health care workers? Because we know that is also an area that's really struggling with keeping pace with talent, with people who are counselors, with psychologists, with clinical social workers, with peer helpers. And so that is, I think, regardless of whether you're a veteran or not a veteran, how we develop our behavioral health support system is going to be really imperative, and that's something that we need to, again, plan for, build curriculum for. And I see a hand back here.
That wasn't the question I really asked. I was talking about things that they have. One example is somebody gets out of the military and his experiences in weapons. He knows all he needs to know about rifles and machine guns. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's great.
And all those other things. How do you write him a resume to get a job? That was
Yeah.
just one example. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Yes, a crosswalk from the skills. Yes, definitely.
And
Those
the VA
are,
doesn't do that.
pardon?
The VA doesn't do that.
No, the VA does not do that, but thank you for clarifying your question. There are some of those, I know that on, I think it's ONET, there are some sites that do that crosswalk from military experience into civilian labor force. And so really helping adopt someone, because somebody doesn't, somebody coming out of the military may not realize like what they're competitive for with their skill sets. And so a lot of that takes career coaching. And so through the public workforce system, through many different organizations, a veteran could work with someone to really pull out what are my skills, do I have any gaps? Do I need a certificate on the civilian side in order for me to be competitive for it? So I'd still say WorkSource is a good place to start. So.
Yeah, that was my question is, if I'm a veteran and I walk in and say, geez, I need a job, does Workforce have somebody who knows how to put them to the right way instead of
Yes.
just trying to do the same thing they do for everybody else, because they have different problems. And I'm not talking about emotional, but I'm talking about work problems.
Absolutely, there are people who can do that, and what I would also say is, it's not a perfect translation or system, and so other things that we have to do is to evolve our licensing bodies, our credentialing bodies, those credentialing bodies that even beyond it's not the college, but like anyone who wants to be a nurse, for example, has to go through a specific licensing body to get there. Some of those steps can be really hard for somebody coming out of the service to get to that certificate. So that licensing body doesn't know the skill sets that were learned or trained for in the service. And so we need those to be more adaptable to lived experience. And so those are conversations that can happen not just locally, but we need to have with our state partners too.
Okay, and I'm going to need a little help with this question because I'm not sure I can read all the writing. So whoever submitted, if you could help me out here, I'll start out, then raise your hand. What power does CWP have over historically? And that's as far as I can go.
Like McDonald's.
Pardon?
Big corporations like McDonald's, the
Oh.
classically low-paying jobs. Like, what can you do about that? It kind of feels like whatever you present, McDonald's isn't going to change. And aren't they the 2/5?
So that's a good question. In some ways, I think there's a lot that we can do because
Any
it's
questions
about what
on
our
Zoom?
community and what our leaders are embracing as policy changes and things. So there's lots of policies that get in the way of somebody making more money. So for example, this is just because I have a board member who's a franchisee owner, not of McDonald's but of something else. There was a bill that was working its way through the legislature because there were a lot of franchisee owners that wanted to pay their people more money because it was getting harder for them to find talent. And because of the corporate level, they were saying, no, you can't do that. And so there was a bill that was working its way through the legislature that was going to say, hey, we err on the side of the franchisee as opposed to the corporation saying you can't do these things. But like in a way that would make sense and that says like we're responding to our local economy. And it's just one example about like their hiring practices. But I think that's one way that Oregon could help support increasing wages is by supporting those small business owners locally that have franchisees and I'm getting political here, so I'm gonna stop talking about that. But what I would say is I think that there is a lot that we can do to increase what it means to live in our community and care about people. If we keep throwing our hands up in the air and saying like it's not my problem. Like, I'm good, so if I'm good, I don't have to worry about so-and-so down the street who can't pay their medical bill and is probably going to have to plead bankruptcy and might end up homeless. That's not my problem. The issue is it is our problem. And so the more we realize that we're impacted by each other's success as much as we are impacted by our own, the better our decisions can be made for these system changes. So And there's probably a lot of other ways I would answer that the more I think about it.
All right, we have another question from our attendees here. How would you explain the relationship that Clackamas Workforce Partnership has with the community colleges, the high school, universities, the employment department, in helping people determine a career path opportunity?
I would answer that question differently for each of those partners that you named because it is a little bit different. So a lot of the ecosystem that is workforce development, some of us play in this sandbox because we're required to. We're required to play together in the sandbox. Not that we wouldn't want to anyway, but there's some requirements around, hey, I have to work alongside of your programming. And then there are other partners that aren't required to, but are like, hey, we want to be in the sandbox playing too because this is really cool and we want to do this stuff. So the relationship looks different, whether there's a formal partnership, like Clackamas Community College and us have several different ways that we partner. We contract with them for workforce development services. We also invest in the college through training programs, because so many of our people who come in through WorkSource are looking for training, and so through their career coaches, they may choose, that individual may choose to go to Clackamas Community College, or they might choose to go to Mount Hood Community College like PF did, and it becomes person specific. We also partner with them on grant writing. Sometimes they'll write a grant that supports the public workforce system. We write a letter of support or sign on to it, or vice versa. There's lots of ways that we see partnership operating with an entity like Clackamas Community College, and with our K-12 system, again, it's different. We have career technical education programs that we're helping to inform. Sometimes we'll get a call from a high school teacher who says, hey, I need help building my advisory group, so we'll reach out to our business community and help set that table. But because we have such diversity in our K-12 system, we need to have conversations about what does it mean to be developing a workforce for the 21st century. So I'm actually going to be having some conversations with our superintendents and the school boards in early April about the future of work and what partnerships in the workforce development system look like. And then beyond education, how we partner with other public entities, again, it's dependent on the leaders, it's dependent on the staff, how they interact with us. I think I failed to mention earlier that we are not a direct service provider, so Clackamas Workforce Partnership is an investor in the community and oversees the public workforce system. So we're a strategic convener of these conversations. How do we leverage? How do we broker? How do we work better across our systems so that people get what they need and employers get what they need? And so not being a direct service provider creates us as a neutral partner to the best service delivery. We were big advocates for Senate Bill 623 because we saw the challenges with our system as being like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So we needed help from our legislature and from our governor's office and from state agencies to say what happens in Clackamas needs to look different than, again, other parts of the state. And we have these siloed systems that are making it counterintuitive for us to working together. None of our data systems talk to each other. That's another area that we've been really advocating for over the last several years. We need stronger connections between referrals so people don't slip through the cracks from one service provider to another. So there's a lot of activity in saying, how do we partner in a way where the individual feels the most amount of benefit with the least amount of going and repeating their story and jumping from one entity to the next. So I think that how we partner can look different depending on the organization, what they do, what they want to do with us, and for us, our name says it all. Clackamas, we serve Clackamas. We're all about the people that we serve and the workforce, and it's all about partners. We can't do this work alone.
Okay, I think that's the key. It is a collaborative effort. One of the comments I made earlier is I think this is the first time in our state's history we have more job openings available today than we have unemployed individuals to fill those jobs. One of the main issues that I think we've found is that employers are having a difficult time matching people's skill set with the job openings so that there's a good match. And as Omicron does fade, and as the people that went on the federal subsidies and the state unemployment benefits, as they start to come back to work now from this vacation called the Great Resignation, how do you just basically said you're an intervener, that basically you're here to support a lot of other organizations. If one of those people were sitting in the audience right now, what would you tell them to do if they now wanted to join the workforce again?
Let's talk about it. What do you want to do? Like, what are you thinking for your future? What gets you excited? Is there, do you have an industry? We have some people who come into our system, they know exactly what they want to do, and they're like, I want that training, I might need the support, and they can get there pretty seamlessly. For other people, they're like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I'm really struggling with, I've been doing this for a long time. I don't know if my skills translate into something else. So I think the first part is to recognize that everyone in our community has something to offer of value to our community. And so we need to pull that out of them. And also, we have a lot of people who have been burned and hurt by people. I've worked in toxic workplaces. I don't want to work in those places anymore. And I know that there's a lot of people who are like, I don't want to go back to a toxic workplace. And so I think it is going to be a matter of figuring out what works for them and what doesn't work for them. Them clearly knowing, this is what I bring to the table, this is how I can benefit the next employer, this is what I'm going to need to get there. And also a public workforce system and a private sector system that supports them on that journey. And so if we can be working together with our private sector partners, we can be building a pipeline of talent, not just for today, but for the future. Because the idea that somebody's kind of on their own after they get out of high school isn't working for our society anymore. So we need them to be thinking about what's going to be my next plan. How am I going to stay dynamic with my skill sets? So if they were sitting right here, I'd be like, let's talk. Let's get you connected to somebody. There are career coaches in our system that are ready to respond exactly to that question about what do I need to do next. And as the Public Workforce Board, I'll just make this plug. If someone is not getting what they need from our system, the more we know about that, the better we can do to rectify it. So if somebody is feeling like they're struggling with navigating our system, the more stories we have about that, the more we can champion the change at our state and federal level.
Okay, we've got time for 2 more questions, and then we'll wrap it up here. Last year, our state legislature removed achievement requirements as a necessity to graduate with a high school diploma. Do you think that this will help or hurt the creation of a 21st century workforce?
Repeat the question one more time. I was thinking about water.
Okay. Last year, our state legislature removed achievement requirements as a necessity to graduate with a high school diploma. Do you think this will help or hurt the creation of a 21st century workforce?
I think it depends on the occupation. It's I don't think that there's a simple answer. I don't think there's a yes or no to that. I think like most things, it gets more complicated. I think that there are a lot of things that we're setting up unnecessary barriers for people to achieve success, how they determine it. I don't want to tell people what success means to them. I want people to say, this is what success means. And for some people, success might mean I make do as long as I can go home and play my video games and grab a pizza and a beer every once in a while. I'm good. And there's going to be other people who want different, and that's okay. So again, it's determined by that person. There's a lot of unnecessary bureaucracy that exists. And so whether that's good or bad, I guess time will tell. But the whole thing needs, every single system has an impact on our community's ability to be successful. And so again, if we keep siloing these conversations, we're never going to get at the whole thing. So I don't know that that's necessarily the right answer any more than I think that building apprenticeships across the entire, everything being an apprenticeship program is the right answer. So
There is no right answer.
Yes, no, maybe, sometimes.
All of the above.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to need a little help again with this last question. I think I got most of it. Some of our private sector training providers are failing? I thought that might be failing. Okay, are failing. For example, Marylhurst College has closed. How is that important in the workforce availability and skill level? Is that it?
Yeah, I have real opinions about private sector education. So I think everyone should have access to high quality education. And what's unfortunate is because the way that the United States is set up, those, depending on where you live and what you have access to, it depends on if you're able to go to a private institution and not have accrued debt or be in lifelong debt for 40 years trying to pay that off. And that can be crippling. So like some of these other answers, I think that the education system, we as a society need to reevaluate what education means from birth through life. So we have to have hard conversations and different conversations, because those things will continue to happen. We'll see schools that are shut down. I mean, if I just read an article today about like the number of teachers that are leaving the education field is extraordinary. Well, we're not gonna have anybody to teach at any schools if we can't take care of our teachers. And so those are the kinds of conversations like we need to have. Like, is education important to us? Are we willing to, are we valuing it enough to make it a living wage and listen to the people who are doing this work? Same thing for our care community, those who are taking care of our older people or people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, our young people. We have rode on the backs of women for a really long time, and I think that is a fundamental thing that we need to have a conversation about, because the care industry has been built on the backs of women, and that can no longer be the case, because our workplaces need to reflect the diversity that exists. And if over 50% of our population is women, our workplaces need to reflect what's important to women. And so I've kind of rambled a little bit, but I think you get the gist that there are much needed conversations when it comes to education.
All right, Bridget, you never cease to amaze me with the wealth of knowledge and information you have. I think we all have to recognize Bridget is very, very passionate about what she's involved with. She takes her role with Clackamas workforce very, very seriously. And every time I've heard you speak, I walk away with such an appreciation for everything you do. It's 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and if not more. If there was an extra day on leap year, you'd be working that day too. But can we give Bridget a warm thank you for her presentation today.